All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is day 8, 40 days of 4VKM, and I hope you're enjoying the series so far. I think it's been a good, interesting look. A lot of people have had questions. You know, the 4VKM videos, they kind of come at you pretty fast sometimes, so it's hard to really get everything. And if you don't have all the context, like wrestling and the 17th letter and Mr. T, then, you know, you can kind of get lost in the whole thing, right? So the episode that we're going to cover today is episode 8. It's, again, one of my favorites. I guess they're all my favorite, right? But it's called Removing the Virus, World Wrestling Essential, right? So obviously the year's 2020. This video comes out on June 20th, 2020. So we all know what's going on, right? You know, varying degrees of lockdowns all throughout the United States and the world. And it's almost like the world stood still at the beginning of this whole pandemic. You have really everything shut down. We've never seen anything like this before. Sports shut down. Sports being played with no fans, right? You know, work from home took over. So many different things. But what was really going down during this time? I don't know if we know right now. There's a lot of theories and speculation out there as far as what was happening during this lockdown period. It gets interesting when you think about the hospital ships that Trump sent to New York and I believe LA. You know, what were they up to, considering they weren't really being used for COVID very much so. So, you know, who knows what was going on during that whole process. But let's get into the video, right? So the beginning of the video starts off, and you have the President Trump in the White House, flanked by the military generals. And this was October 2017, I believe. And this is the infamous calm before the storm speech, right? And over it, there's a 17 drop that talks about, you know, we hope that this message can get out to people, right? Now, a couple interesting things about that drop is at the beginning of it, it says POTUS will be insulated on Air Force One. But at the end of the drop, it's signed 4/10/20, which stands for DJT, Donald John Trump. So it's like either Trump's talking in the third person or the first person. I don't know. Whatever The Rock used to do. Or is he talking about somebody else? Don't really know. You know, these things are kind of left up for interpretation, right? But very specifically, it calls out that message, right? And that kind of connects with some wrestling stuff that happened later on this year in 2020 about the message, the WWE message, and the truth will be heard, right? So we have the calm before the storm. We have that clip. We have the news media talking about it. What does it mean? What does it mean? And then we cut to Vince McMahon in the mid-90s. He was going through his steroid trial. And I always like to make the comparison. You know, it seems like whatever they go after Vince McMahon for, they also go after Donald Trump for, right? You see this in a later on video, in actually one of our last episodes that we did on 5/29/2023. And, you know, it's all the greatest hits, I like to call it, right? They accuse Trump of rape. They accuse Vince McMahon of rape. They say Trump's a racist. They say Vince McMahon's a racist. They say NDAs and hush money. Vince McMahon paid off hush money. Donald Trump, they said, paid off people with hush money, right? So you have this parallel story, right? But the problem is that you have the same scumbags that keep, you know, repeating these stories, right? So, you know, it's one thing when people do bad stuff, but when you have bad people accusing people of doing bad stuff, it kind of muddies the water a little bit as far as, what the truth is, right? So, jury's out on all that stuff. But at the end of the day, Vince McMahon cuts a promo defending himself against the fake news and against federal prosecutors who overreached. And, he tells this parallel story, right? You can line it up straight up with the Mueller witch hunt with Trump, right? If you watch the two clips, you have Vince kind of talking about a witch hunt. He even uses that phrase, right? He says, the feds don't participate in witch hunts, right? He says that he always assumed that the federal prosecutors, the federal government, were the good guys, right? Until he saw kind of the dirty tricks and stuff that they were up to try to take him down. Why were they trying to take him down so much, right? And it was a coordinated effort during this period. You had the media full on out. Phil Mushnick, right, who's not a good person. You want to talk about racist, Phil Mushnick is a racist. But, so you have Phil Mushnick, he calls him out by name. I believe he was working at the New York Post at the time. And he just obliterates him because he's fake news, right? And he's pushing this narrative. And he's coming after Vince and Vince's livelihood and his business and his family, right? So Vince takes it very personal. He's going to fight back. So ultimately, Vince is going through this trial against the federal government for steroids, right? Saying that he was selling steroids knowingly to wrestlers and whatnot, right? And he ends up winning. He ends up winning the trial. He gets acquitted. And again, a lot of similarities with the Trump impeachment trial, for example, right? They called no witnesses in both instances, right? They're both acquitted, right? And then after they're both acquitted, their opponents are trying to say, oh yeah, just because he was acquitted doesn't mean that he was, in the right and that he was innocent, right? So they are seeding distrust within the process by saying, oh yeah, just because he's found innocent doesn't mean he is. That's not how America works, right? So you have these two guys who are besties, I like to say, Vince and Trump, and they're both being attacked by the federal government. They both use the phrase witch hunt. This is the mid-90s that Vince McMahon is saying it, right? And they both win at the end of the day too, right? And, when Trump kind of won and he was acquitted, what happened right after that? You had the pandemic roll out, right? So, coincidence, huh? And they went from one scam to another. And why was that, right? It's almost like the whole Russia thing. It was a way to get Hillary Clinton off the hook for losing, right? She had the book. What happened, right? You lost bigly, as we like to call it. So, they went from one scam to another. They went from Russia to the Chyna virus, we'll call it. So, fast forward then, the world locks down, 2020, and WrestleMania is about to be held in Tampa Bay. This is WrestleMania 36 in 2020. And leading up, we were talking the other day about the Royal Rumble and how that is the road to WrestleMania. And you have Drew McIntyre. Love the name, right? Drew. My man, right? McIntyre. If you break that out in gematria, is 107, right? So Drew 107. Very cool. And, he was kind of, he'd been around for a long time. He debuted, I want to say, in 2009 to 2010. And at the time, Vince McMahon on television introduced him essentially as the chosen one, right? He was the chosen one. Now, during that span, he didn't really live up to the chosen one hype, right? Drew ended up leaving WWE several years later, and he kind of reinvented himself, right? He's a big Scottish badass guy, and he reinvented himself. He got bigger, stronger, faster, a meaner character. He traveled all over the world, and then he came back to WWE. When he comes back to WWE, he wins the Royal Rumble in 2020, right? Huge ovation, I remember the crowd, very hot crowd. It's crazy to think about how, we went from such a big crowd to no crowds at all in this time frame, right? Now, interesting thing about the Royal Rumble is that the Royal Rumble, I believe, was the same day Kobe Bryant's helicopter crash happened. And that's weird because, if you look at gematria, you have, I believe, helicopter is 111, and I believe the start is 111, right? And then Kobe was buried in Corona, California. So you kind of have all those weird things. It's almost like it started, right? And if you remember, the virus kind of started around that same time too. Things escalated and shut down in March. Now, I remember as they were talking about shutting the world down in March, I'm like, just wait until after WrestleMania. Do not ruin my WrestleMania streak, right? Remember, I told you I'd been in every one since WrestleMania 27. So this would have been, I think, number 10 for me, right? 9 or 10. So I was very excited. I did not want them to cancel it. And sure enough, they had to fold and they had to cancel WrestleMania at the Tampa Bay Stadium. And they decided, you know what, we're gonna move on with the show. We're still gonna deliver the show for you. And I think that was a very, very important thing. Because at this point in time, the world is scared, right? The world doesn't know what's going on. All their favorite TV shows are being shut down. Sports is being shut down. And, the worst thing that could happen to wrestling fans at this point in time would be no WrestleMania. I mean, it's just unfathomable, right? So they decide that they're going to have WrestleMania at a closed set at their Performance Center in Orlando. And they had WrestleMania with no fans. Now, poor Drew McIntyre, right? Drew 107, he was, remember, the chosen one, right? Well, Donald Trump referred to himself that time as the chosen one. If you remember that speech he was given to reporters outside the White House when he was president. And he was talking about, I think, fighting Chyna, taking on Chyna as far as the chosen one goes. But you have Drew, he was referred to as the chosen one. And I think what that ultimately meant is that it's almost like they knew that this was going to happen in 2020, right? And Drew was going to be the guy to kind of lead the company through the pandemic. I think he was the chosen one for that. And he was ready and he was able to fulfill his end of the bargain. He goes to WrestleMania to fight Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship in the main event in front of no fans. And Drew McIntyre slays the Beast, right? The chosen one takes the Beast out. That's Brock Lesnar's name, the Beast, right? And when Paul Heyman used to introduce Brock Lesnar, he would introduce him as Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar, the Beast, right? So you had Drew slay the Beast and become the WWE champion for this important period in WWE's history, in the world's history, right? He kind of led the WWE through the pandemic. So Drew wins WrestleMania. And then, once again, the WWE comes under attack. Why do they come under attack? Because they were essentially declared an essential business in the state of Florida by Ron DeSantis, right? So Ron DeSantis, it wasn't just WWE. If you remember, MLB was trying to put together a plan where they had all, they used the spring training sites they were going to do. They wanted to bring MLB, start that up in Florida. If you remember the NBA bubble, they did that in Orlando, I believe. AEW, the other wrestling promotion, the competitor, they were doing shows in Jacksonville, right? You see a clip of Ron DeSantis talking about speaking to Lisa Kennedy, who was in charge of NASCAR, and saying, I want to see him race, right? So, he kind of allowed all the sports essential status and media, right? So news, entertainment, anybody that was in the world of media, they could continue to operate as an essential business. They weren't locked down. They weren't shut down. So WWE takes advantage of this. At the same time, Linda McMahon, now she's running. She was doing the Small Business Association for Trump. Now she's running America First PAC, right? Which is she's still doing today. And they make a donation of $18 million into the state of Florida that they're going to spend for the Super PAC. So then the media jumps on that, and they're like, oh, see what happened? She gave Ron DeSantis $18 million, and then now they're essential business, right? And that's not really what happened. Sure, they said they were going to spend the money in Florida, but it didn't go to Ron DeSantis. And again, the WWE just had the same privilege that every other sports and media company had. But you see the clips, you see that idiot Chris Hayes, you see this other no-name jackass that he has on his show going, oh, Vince McMahon, he had to do it because he has to provide Fox live programming. If he doesn't, then, he violates his contract. Like, this guy's an idiot. Like, just a total buffoon, right? Because all you had to do is look and see that all the other sports had the same privileges that Vince and WWE had, right? So anyway, they're essential, right? WWE is considered an essential business in the state of Florida, and they continue to operate under those circumstances, and they never missed a show. That's why I'm so thankful and grateful for WWE. They were the leaders after 9/11, if you remember that. First public assembly after 9/11 was Vince McMahon, SmackDown. 2 days later, on Thursday, 9/11 was a Tuesday, the first major crowd in the country was SmackDown, a very patriotic show in Houston, Texas, that they did live for the world. And that was a symbol of strength at that period of time, that, we're not going to be scared of our enemies and whatnot. And I think it was very similar with COVID as well. Shit, I said it. Oh, well. But anyway, so you have essential status, right? You have WrestleMania coming up as well. We kind of already talked about WrestleMania. But something very interesting happens right before WrestleMania that year. And on SmackDown, they were kind of doing this shadowy Anon character, right? And this character debuts the SmackDown before WrestleMania, that Friday, right? So that Friday before WrestleMania, and, you can look at the video. It's basically a circle with like a little dash in the corner, almost to make like the 17th letter thing. And it's on the screen, and this thing talks about the truth will be heard. The truth will be heard, right? And it's all about exposing. It even talks about what's in the darkness will be brought to the light, right? Wow, where have you heard that before? So you see a couple JFK quotes from the drops lined up with this character as well. There is a scene that they show where the character has an iPhone, and they're putting in the password to unlock the phone, and it's 510 20, I believe it was, which 051020, right? If you drop the zeros, you have 512. Go to the drop on 512. It says the truth belongs to the people. And this whole character is saying the truth will be heard, right? The truth belongs to the people. The truth will be heard, right? It was also the date of the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, right? So double meaning there, in my opinion. But most people only caught the meaning of the date of the Money in the Bank. You got to pull the layers back, drop the zeros, and you see a bigger picture sometimes, right? So you have this strange, very strange correlation here. They have this Q-ish character on WWE television at the time. And ultimately, it actually ends up being an Antifa group, right? It's basically an Antifa group, right? So they're all wearing masks. They all wear black masks. And if you remember May of that year, what happened with the George Floyd fella and the civil unrest that came about that afterwards, right? So you have these characters now so we went from the Q-ish character, right? The truth will be heard. And then now that's kind of the group that is running mayhem throughout WWE, breaking stuff. There's a big scene where they just tear the whole ring apart and Chase beat the hell out of everybody around them, and all this, civil unrest stuff that mirrored what was happening in society at the time. Now, a lot of people didn't like this angle, right? Because people get sensitive when they kind of mirror real life sometimes, especially when it has to do with hot button political issues like this had become. So you have that going on. You have the Antifa group, right? And you have The Rock. Now, you remember The Rock. He gave this big speech. Where are you? Where are you? Right? And, everybody assumes he's talking about Trump. I don't believe he ever names Trump by name in this clip. He's wearing all black. And, in the full clip, he's showing support for Black Lives Matter, right? But he says some interesting things that caught my attention. He talks about we need a leader to come back. Well, Trump didn't go anywhere, so that's why I'm not sure sometimes if he was talking about Trump. He goes, we need this leader to come back and to address the nation and provide clarity of what's going on here. So it's kind of interesting. Who is he talking about, right? Who's not here that's going to come back? What leader is he talking about? And he keeps saying, where are you? Where are you? Like, we're waiting. Come on. Come on out, right? So then you see a clip of the faceless man. Some people know what I'm talking about. Trump's getting off Marine One helicopter. He's walking with a woman that it looks like an Air Force officer or something to that regard, right? And then you see a shadowy figure that looks like our guy. He's in the helicopter with his hands like this, right? So this is how people prefer I hold my hands. I know sometimes they're all over the place and people speculate about it, but so the guy's in the helicopter, he's like this. We know who used to do this. And but you can't really see his face. Even in a pretty clear video, it's almost like his face is like pixelated, blurred out, right? So you can't see the face. You can see the hair. You can see, it's very interesting, right? So let's go back to that QAnon character. You have the show on Fox, FS1, called WWE Backstage, I think it is. And at the time during the pandemic, they're filming remotely for the most part, right? So you have split screen, the four hosts are on there, right? They're talking, and they're talking about this character, this shadowy character that they're trying to figure out who it is, right? And then the hacker, as it is described as, the hacker kind of goes through and cuts out each person, and then goes through, shows that clip, I think, of the 5, 10, 20 with the phone. And then as they come back to the host, the first thing that you hear Booker T say is, Kennedy. And I said, did he just say Kennedy? Right? And I had to slow back and watch it again. And yeah, he says, Kennedy, that Kennedy, that Kennedy, right? What Kennedy is he talking about? Now, I told you the other day, there's a wrestler, Mr. Kennedy, but he hasn't been around for forever, right? So why is he saying Kennedy right on cue there? And then he's saying, this got to be somebody that knows something, somebody that knows about being spied on and all this stuff. And he's kind of, again, describing our guy. Speaking of our guy, at this point, I'm showing you the R post, right? And you get to see that. And again, some people, not everybody agree with that. Not everybody agrees that's official comm or whatever you want to say. I believe it. I think it is at the end of the day. But again, that's my opinion. You're free to have yours. So you have all this going on. It's weird. Now, I was talking about earlier Lisa Kennedy. And one of the things that happened during the pandemic is Donald Trump created a committee of all basically the sports commissioners of the country. And this was like, how do we get sports going back again during the pandemic? And that idiot that was on Chris Hayes' show, he gets all upset because Donald Trump puts Vince McMahon on this committee. And not only does he put him on this committee, as Trump is naming all these people in the speech in the outside garden, he's naming all these people on the committee, and he calls two of them great. Dana White, he says the great Dana White, and then he says the great Vince McMahon. And then right after Vince McMahon, he goes, NASCAR, Lisa Kennedy. So he's saying Vince McMahon and then Lisa Kennedy right after, right? And just say that 5 times fast. Vince McMahon, Lisa Kennedy. Vince McMahon, Lisa Kennedy. Vince McMahon, Lisa Kennedy. It kind of sounds like Vince McMahon is a Kennedy, right? So, this is the first time I show you guys about the PT-109. PT-109 is very interesting. If you go research on that, we were talking about this, I think, in like one of the first episodes. But PT-109 was the PT ship that JFK was the commander of, or the captain of. And it gets sunk in World War II out near the Solomon Islands, which one of them gets renamed Kennedy Island, right? And the story is that JFK had tied up one of the survivors. They had to basically swim to shore from their sunken ship. And one of the guys was badly burned. His name was Patrick McMahon. Now, there's a lot of speculation about who Patrick McMahon is in relation to Vince McMahon. And the truth is, you're not going to find any direct correlation between Patrick McMahon and Vince McMahon. A lot of people say, oh, that's Vince's father. I don't think so, to be honest with you. I think there is some speculation maybe on who could be Vince's father, because at the end of the day, Vince didn't meet his father until he's 12 years old. So that's a big gap right there. And then you're going to meet your dad at 12, right? So it's possible his dad isn't his dad, as we're told. But, we don't have that definitive proof. But what I can tell you later on is that, and I learned this through Grok, the great Grok on X, right? I think when you ask Grok questions, especially about conspiracy theories, it kind of gives you the vague picture, right? And then it gives you a little bit of truth at the end, but then it kind of dispels it with like, oh, but don't listen to me, this is just hearsay, right? So I asked it about Vince McMahon, and is there any connections to the Kennedy family? It was one of the first things I asked, and it's giving me this whole story about how Joseph Kennedy and Vincent Kennedy Sr., or Vincent McMahon Sr., had worked together in the entertainment world. We know that Joseph Kennedy was RKO Pictures and whatnot. RKO is a big finishing move in WWE, Randy Orton's finishing move, right? So you had Kennedy running RKO, and then RKO kind of later on in WWE. But, so it mentions that. But then I think the nugget of truth comes at the end where it says, well, and there's speculation that Vince's mother could be related to the Kennedys somehow. So then I dug into that a little bit. Vince's mother was Vicky Askew, I believe her name was, right? And she recently just passed away just a couple years ago. And when she passed away, I think she was 100, 101, 102. She lived a very long life, right? And Vince kind of always says that that's his benchmark. That's how he wants to at least beat his mom, right? In terms of longevity. Now, if you research her family tree, I believe it's Vince's great-grandmother. Her name was Sarah E. Kennedy. So there you go, right? Vince McMahon is a Kennedy. Do we have that direct correlation to the Kennedys? No. But, he was a Kennedy. Sarah E. Kennedy was his great-grandmother. So, that statement that Trump says, I go back to it because he could have said any other name after Vince McMahon, but he decided to say Lisa Kennedy next, right? And again, Vince McMahon, Lisa Kennedy, Vince McMahon, Lisa Kennedy, Vince McMahon, Lisa Kennedy. You guys get the picture. So anyway, we'll talk more about PT-109 in the future, but that's kind of the first time we introduce it. And that's the first time people start saying, wait, is there a connection between Vince and the Kennedys, right? Well, you know, the interesting thing, again, I'm not saying Patrick McMahon is his dad, but that whole story of PT-109, it started, you know, it happened, I think, 2 years before Vince's birth, right? So was he named after this guy? Was he, who knows? I don't know. But the timing is very interesting, to say the least. So we're all over the place here. There's a lot in this episode, I'll tell you. What's next? So we have, let's go back to that Messenger account, right? So this Anon character in WWE, it started off on Twitter. And on Twitter, they actually reused an account from almost like a decade, actually more than a decade before, right? And that caught people's interest because they're like, how do they have this account that is, you know, not connected to a recent time? It's, you know, 2020, and this account says it was created in 2009. So 2009, it was actually the account for a pro WWE account called Stand Up for WWE. And they created this account because Linda McMahon was running for U.S. Senate in Connecticut in 2010. And what ended up happening is the media, like they always like to attack Vince and the WWE, they were attacking Linda for her past relationship with WWE because she was the CEO there, and she's the husband of Vince. So they're attacking her. They're using old clips of her, you know, and getting tombstoned by Kane and all this crazy stuff, right? And showing clips of Vince doing crazy stuff. They're just attacking the company, right? So Vince creates this campaign called Stand Up for WWE, where he encourages everybody to kind of, share what WWE means to them, right? So they had this account. Well, that account is the one that they rebranded to be this Anon account. So it's kind of interesting. Now, it gets even interesting more when you look at Linda and her campaign. Remember, she was running in Connecticut. So Connecticut leans more liberal, you would say, right? She was actually using JFK, in her campaign ads, right? She would have clips of JFK talking about lowering taxes and all this other stuff, right? And then she'd come in and say, I'm Linda McMahon, and I approve this message. What worked back then works today too. So it's very interesting. So this campaign, she's using JFK. They have this Stand Up for WWE account that they repurposed for this Anon account. You have Booker T slipping and saying Kennedy, right? So, it's wild, right? Just imagine me watching all this. So that's kind of that account. We show a little bit more stuff. There's a wrestler, Sami Zayn. First time I show him is in this video. And during this period of time, 2020, his character, he's a conspiracy theorist, right? He thinks everything's a conspiracy theorist, right? He grows his beard out like me. He grows his hair out long, right? I'm like, I felt like I was watching myself to a degree, right? But here's the interesting thing. He's Canadian, and he's dressing like Fidel Castro. So you guys can connect the dots there. Is there any other Canadian that that has something to do with Fidel Castro? Maybe like Justin Trudeau, I don't know. But so you have that interesting thing. But the crazy part is that Sami Zayn would have a logo, and the logo was basically the Antifa logo. So we were talking about Antifa earlier in this new WWE group that is kind of mirroring what Antifa's doing, right? And then you have a wrestler whose logo is the two Antifa flags, but it's altered slightly, and instead of anti-fascist, it says SC for Sami Zayn in it. But look it up. Look up the Sami Zayn logo. Look up the Antifa logo. It's like a perfect match, right? So you have all that stuff going on. You have, and the scene ends with Titus O'Neil, who is a phenomenal guy, Tampa resident. and he's trying to calm everybody down with these riots and everything that's going on during COVID. And Tampa at the time had a lot of civil unrest. They burned down a Foot Locker, right? And in Titus's speech, he goes, they burned down this building 17 miles down the street. And you're like, oh, wow, what a number that he chose right there, right? So at the end of the day, they're kind of on top of everything that's going on. And the last thing that we kind of call out is, if you remember, there's that drop that said, "Hello, George." And it was either drop 529 or the date was 529. I don't remember. But if you remember, the whole George Floyd thing happened on 529. So you have "Hello, George," you have George Floyd, but which George are they talking about? How about George Soros, right? Where does he fit into the picture? Well, what I always like to say is people like to call me propaganda, and I don't care. Hey, Obama legalized it, right? But, I like to say that I created 4VKM to kind of counter the anti-McMahon propaganda that's out there. And when I think about anti-McMahon propaganda, the first thing that I think about is Dark Side of the Ring. Dark Side of the Ring is a series on Vice that just constantly, week after week, they pick the worst stories that ever happened in wrestling, and they're really they just pile on Vince in the WWE. It's just constant WWE, Vince McMahon hit pieces coming out from Dark Side of the Ring, right? Who owns Vice? Soros. Soros owns a little bit of it, right? So it's kind of interesting that you have that connection right there. We were talking about, the R post earlier. You have a character, a wrestler called R-Truth. The letter R, Truth, right? So, and he's been around for a very long time. So you got R-Truth, you got Soros and Vice, and you have this new Anon character that Booker T mentions Kennedy about, right? And their whole thing is saying the truth will be heard. So it gets very interesting, to say the least. I know this episode, I kind of went all over the place, but the best thing that you can do is just watch the episode. I know YouTube has a problem with the links in the description. Take the space out after the HTTPS, take that. You can copy paste it into your browser, or just search "removing the virus 4VKM" on Rumble. You should find it, no problem, and check it out, right? So don't forget to check that out. Hope you guys enjoy it. Don't forget to subscribe to the 4VKM podcast channel on YouTube. We are launching that on 2/21/2024. They just announced a big announcement for WWE 2K24. That's the video game. And they're going to announce, I believe, the cover character on 1/22. It's the mirror of 2/21. And the rumors, because they put a picture today of the Undertaker casket, it might be the Undertaker who's a big part of the story, which you'll see in future 4VKM recap. So, without further ado, enjoy the show. Enjoy episode 8 of 4VKM, Removing the Virus, World Wrestling Essential. Because WWE was essential through the pandemic, and thank God for it, because I don't know what I would have done without Raw, SmackDown every week. So, thank you, Vince. And, thank you, President Trump, for putting him on the board to reopen sports. So, enjoy the show, ladies and gentlemen.